She'd only been in the United States for a couple of years when I was born in New York. And so when they moved to California, I was about, I think, 5 or 6 years old. So really my first memories of my mom are from the time we moved to Los Gatos and moved into the house my mother died in a few weeks ago. And so in this talk, I wanted to touch on a few themes that struck me as important to me and important in my mom's life. And some of this comes from the slideshow that you see here today. And I'm going to talk just a couple minutes about the slideshow. I'm glad Mark is sitting here. So I found, I had for some time a bag of about 2,000 slides that my dad had taken in the early years that we were living in California, and so I'd never kind of done anything with those, and by the time I now wanted to do something with them, there was no such thing as a slide projector anymore, things like that. So I called Marco and I said, what do I do with these slides? So he said, oh, you know, it's so easy, you can get these things digitized. So we got the slides all put in digital form as quickly as we could, and then you know, I went through all 2,000 slides on my computer and realized a couple things. One is my father was probably the worst photographer on the entire planet. So there were like a lot of really bad slides. There were a lot of pictures of horses. We don't need to see that today. But anyway, I managed to pick out a bunch of slides, and with Marco's help, with the technology, we got it on Apple TV. So exciting. So yeah, so that's the slideshow. And if you after you've heard this story, going back and looking at the slides, there'll sort of be more to them probably. So my first theme, you will not be surprised to hear, is fashion. My mom was an expert seamstress. She sewed basically, she sewed basically all of her own clothes up until to the point where she just couldn't sew anymore. She sewed all of my clothes, and she taught me how to sew. And I distinctly remember when I was working on some sewing project and I get it all goofed up and I take it to her, she says, well, you just have to rip it all out. The thread is ripping out. And she was very firm about that. So I did a lot of ripping out. She also, one thing you'll notice in the slides is that she liked to dress, sometimes the three of us, my sister and I and my mom, all in the same, sort of same fabrics. But this turned out to be an extremely important thing because it's how we met Ines Zakeen. Because my mom would be at church with the two of us when we were probably about 7 years old, I think, yeah? And we're wearing our matching outfits, and lo and behold, here's Ines and Shauna with Marco and Peter in their matching outfits. I kid you not. And if you look at the slides, you will see, I am not kidding, they were wearing exactly identical sweaters and little matching shorts, right? The later hosen aren't there, but there were also later hosen.
There are small blessings, yes.
So my mom, I think, one or the other must have gone up to the other one and said, oh, you know, I love the way your children are dressed or whatever. And this started basically a lifelong friendship between the two ladies. So yeah, the fashion thing turned out to be very important in that regard. She also, whoops, I'm skipping, sorry. It's not going to be as long as John's. I think it's a little short. Oh, the other role that Ines played, Ines kind of became my mom's American navigator, having to do with fashion and all things having to do with girls. Because I so wanted to be American. It was like so important. And my mom was so Polish. I mean, one of the bad things that I should have apologized for at the very beginning is that my mom would have wanted me to give this talk in Polish, and of course I can't. And Sam can attest to that. I can understand it. I can understand it, but I can't speak it. We spoke Polish at home. It was very traditional. My stubborn dad, you know, when it came to what I wanted, was things like getting my hair cut in like a, you know, modern style, contact lenses, braces, all those modern things. With Ines's help and my mom's support, I got to have it, and especially the hairdos. Ines used to come and cut all of our hair, my mom's hair, my hair, and you can see I have these beautiful updos for dances and parties that I would go to, some at Vicky's house, and there's pictures of that too. So it's fantastic. We didn't have a lot of money, but my mom made sure I always had what I wanted, including Capezios. It was so important. And she just made sure I had the things I wanted. And when my family needed her to work, when my dad was out of work, she did. She worked as a seamstress. She worked really hard. And in health food stores in Las Gatos, like John talked about. Later, when I was working on my own, my mom loved to go shopping with me. That was a big deal. We'd go shopping together all the time. I tried to buy her clothes, but she didn't want that. She wanted more than anything to just be with me. I think she loved just going shopping and spending time with me, looking at beautiful clothes, and watching me be extravagant and encouraging me, which obviously I did not need, and enjoying it all through me. And one of the things she said, it's hard to say, but I remember one time I was trying on some stuff, and I think the sales lady, self-serving comment said, "Oh, that looks so beautiful on you." And my mom just turned to both of us and said, "Well, why wouldn't it look beautiful on her? Anything would look beautiful." So sweet. Let's see. Okay, so the second theme is love of the outdoors in California, and that kind of shows up in the slides too. Although the slides do show a lot of camping activity, that was really my dad's idea and not my mother's favorite thing to do. But she did love being outdoors, and once we discovered Fallen Leaf Lake in the 1960s, where we could stay in a cabin with at least cold running water and a nearby bathroom with showers, the camping days were kaput. That was it. So she loved going to the lake. She loved walking around. She wasn't a big hiker, but she liked walking some of the lower trails. And here in Las Gatos, she loved hiking in the hills. She walked everywhere with my dad, and with Ellis would walk with them. That's Steve's mom, who's Enos's sister, who comes into the picture a little bit later in all of this. So it was just one of her favorite things to do. And she basically kept walking until she literally, physically just couldn't walk anymore. That was a really important thing to her. She traveled a lot in her life, and wherever she would go, she would walk. She walked in Algeria. She walked in Venezuela. But wherever she went, as John said, she would always say that California was the best. It was her favorite place. Friends and helping others is the next theme. My mom loved people and parties. She was really social in her younger days, but she was also really helpful to other people. I remember when I was really small, my mom would, I don't think she could even drive then. She learned to drive when I was probably 8 or 9. She would walk down the hill from her house to this other little house that was down there, and she was taking care of an older lady there, and she would take food to her every day and take care of her. And I thought it was really, I didn't understand it because I was so small, like why would she do that? But she did. She gave out lots of advice. She took in kids to live or just be there. She seemed to understand when someone was in trouble and had a way of helping them without making them feel bad about it. And at the same time making sure I understood that's the thing to do. You just help others who are less fortunate, and you don't judge or ask a lot of questions. She could be very frank with people, and they appreciated it, I think. Again, later when I was on my own and working, I would take my mom with me to outings like the opera, music, all things she loved, plays, movies, art outings, to look at art. She always had a great time. She was a great party companion. And if she didn't show up for one reason or another, my friends would always ask, "Where's your mom?" I remember that so well. It was also when I was getting involved in different things, and people that wanted to find out more about me, they would Google me, and they'd get my mom instead of me. My mom was a lot more famous than I was because of her art that she did, and so they'd always go, "God, you don't look like you're in your 80s." Oh, it's always funny. My mom always said that you can always find something to talk to someone about. She was very charming, and I think of her when I need to be so. It's sometimes hard, as my father could be just the opposite. So when the stubborn, opinionated side of me comes out, it's from my dad and not my mom. Thriftiness and independence. Janine will appreciate this. My mom was the original health, food, and no waste advocate. She was an environmentalist before anyone knew what that was. There were no sodas in our house. For a while, I think we had no sugar. She wouldn't use her dishwasher because it used too much energy. She kept the heat turned down so we could see our breath, right, Janine? Frustrating. And I think it was all partly because she so wanted to be independent and not wanting to have to depend on anyone else to take care of her if she, didn't have the means. But I have to mention a couple of things, and we're going to talk about the flowers, but the other thing she did a lot of was re-gifting, just so you all know now that she's passed away. If you gave her a gift, it probably got passed on to somebody else. She was really good at that. because she didn't want to always have to go out and buy gifts. So, because again, that was wasteful. So now I'm going to tell the story about the can. So this is actually a garbage can, and it has a flower arrangement in it. And this garbage can was in my mother's house, and my mother, it was a stage where my mother was driving me crazy a little bit because she had, her eccentricities were kind of extreme in terms of her not wanting to waste. And so she would use this can for her garbage, and she'd put in those plastic bags that you get, like, you know, when you buy, well, not so much anymore, but like at Payless or wherever, you know, that have holes in them and aren't good for that purpose. So they're always leaking, and I was complaining. I said, you know, you have to use regular garbage bags, not these ones that leak and blah, blah, blah. Well, finally, Janine and I conspired. I took away this garbage can, removed it, got her a regular garbage can, and we insisted that she use those plastic, you know, regular garbage bags that you buy. And she's never forgot about this garbage can. And she kept asking me about it and asking Janine to bring it back. So I kept telling her I have not thrown it away or anything. It's here at my house, but you know, you can't have it. You have to have this one. So that's the can.
She'd be so happy you're using it today.
Exactly. We have been using it. We have been using it. Probably is. Oh dear. Okay, so the next theme is art. Big theme in my mom's life. When my mom actually was living in Algeria in the late 1970s with my dad, she asked me to bring, when I came to visit them there, quite a trip, she asked me to bring her some watercolors. So when I came for a visit, which I did, and basically this started her late in life career as an artist, her passion. And she worked really hard at it. She started with watercolors. She took classes when she was back here. In the United States, she met other artists who became her friends. She moved on to make collages and work in other media. She had shows in local galleries. I know many of you were involved in that or saw the shows. And she kind of became famous. So she was in the newspaper, and you can Google her, and you can see her on there. So the art really became kind of a major part of her life. And of course, she's passed that on to me, not in terms of being able to make anything, but in terms of loving art. And my last theme, the hardest theme, but not the least, I'll talk about Sam. My mom waited a long time. My mom waited a long time for her first and only grandchild, and she told me later, I never understood what the other grandmothers were talking about. The wonderfulness of a grandchild. I didn't get it. What was that about? Until you had Sam. Now I know what it is about. That's what my mom said. She adored Sam, and if she could have, she would have happily been my full-time nanny. When Sam was about 6 weeks old, I was already back at work, and we came over with Sam to see my mom, and she looked at both of us and said, "You two look so tired. You have to leave him here with me." Well, we know what that was about. It's about us. But anyway, so when Sam was about 6 weeks old, he spent the night at my mom's house. Just this little, and she got up at night, and she fed him, and she took care of him. I said, "Are you sure you can do this? You're going to have to get up in the middle of the night." And she totally did it, and she just loved it. And from then on, she would take him any time. Sam would be over there, and she let him watch television to his heart's content. Oh, she was so tolerant of him, and let you eat those frozen pizzas that she didn't approve of at all. She always followed what Sam was doing. She always asked me about what he was doing before talking about anything else. When I showed up, completely ignored me, went straight to Sam, gave him a big hug. Really important. I'm so glad she lived as long as she did, and I think she partly did live as long as she did because of Sam. So she could see Sam grow up and make a successful transition to college. It's a big deal for her. Just a couple last thoughts. Whenever I was at the end of my rope, or my friend would say, on my last nerve, my mom was there to talk to me, comfort me, and support me, whatever the problem was, until her own bad health just overcame her. I will never, ever forget that, and I will miss her forever. Thanks for listening to this ramble, and now I know there are others who would like to talk. Vicki, you want to talk, right?